there's one. And where there's one, there is another.
I almost thought I was going to have to do that myself.
No, you're good. I had to hurry up and chew what I was eating. I don't want to be like, hey, everybody, welcome to another episode. I'm going to eat on string like an ass.
I was eating Halloween candy once on one of my podcast episodes at the beginning, so I'm just going, nom. So anyway, about these politics, nom.
Get the jobbers come out of here. Anyways, yeah, you will see that we are not joined by our third host. I don't know what he didn't get to me about anything. I don't know if he said anything to you.
He said he's going to be here. He just posted like a minute ago. He says he might be a few seconds late, but he's going to be here. So he'll be slinking in, and then he'll be promptly fired and told never to return.
There it is. There it is.
No one's late to this show.
No one's late to this show. Nobody
except
makes
us
me
when we
late
feel
to my
like
own
it.
show, but me. Yeah, but he's not a full-fledged member. He's still an intern. So
probation. He'll be here though.
Probation.
We'll let him do this episode, then we'll fire him at the end, like a good employer does.
Like Friday.
Put your day's work in. You can't just get out of get an extra day.
You fire him on
Company
a Friday.
time.
You fire him
That's
on
right.
a Friday. That's how that works.
Company
Get
time.
me that happy dialysis machine. Anyways, if you listened to our conversation last week, and if you didn't, you are in a lot of trouble. You're in so much of the troubles that you don't even know how much trouble you're actually in this week. We talked about Syria, the crisis going on in Syria. Syria is going through some growing pains right now. I don't think I think we could keep an eye on it, but I think Syria might be all right this time. I think they might be all right.
Maybe. It has already fallen off the news cycle, in case anybody else was following it. Like for a few days, it was boom, 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 and then after we did that show, another day or so later, and then there's been nothing. You have to dig for it, which is always kind of concerning. But there's the latest Trump thing to freak out about, and there's the latest whatever to be upset about. So,
oh my God, Trump gonna take all the rights. He's gonna take all of them, all of the rights. Most people can't even name most of their rights, but he's gonna take them. Project Tartar 5.
I should probably mention it real quick too. I don't know how many people out there listen to our old episodes on SoundCloud. We haven't been sending episodes there since we were audio only because the new software doesn't do that. So, and because I didn't know anybody that was really dedicated listener there, we hadn't really been paying attention to it. But SoundCloud apparently briefly took down one of our episodes. They took down episode 16, which was about Vril and the Thule Society.
Do you know how many years ago episode 16 was?
And it's in the title it mentioned Nazi occultism. And of course they saw the word Nazi and they thought, oh, you can't be doing that. So they sent me a professional but strongly worded email saying, we will not allow this kind of talk on our network. Thank you very much.
You want the truth? All right. Well, we want to have the truth.
And and they took it down briefly, but I responded. I said, hey, you know what? We don't give a about those zombie people. Nazis, not zombies.
You going off that water.
Zombie Nazis, I guess. But we don't care about them. We're not glorifying them. We don't like them. And the episode is about historical stuff. So they looked at it.
Should I bring him to the
stage? And they brought it back in. So let's bring him back on.
You bring him to the stage. I don't want it.
But yeah, we
Do I need to do it? I'll do it.
No.
Hello. There we go. I did it.
I think I got fired again.
Yeah. Gotta wait till the end of the episode, though.
Yeah, that's a good episode ender.
All right, are we done playing with him? Let's bring him in.
All right. Welcome. You're late,
Hello.
so
yes.
you'll be making that
fired.
No, not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
You got to pull in your full day's work today before you get fired.
Anyway, long story short, if you listen on SoundCloud, the episode's back up. It was just a misunderstanding. We weren't glorifying any Nazi stuff. So.
And there was no rap. So I'm surprised that people were like, I thought they thought we were SoundCloud rappers. Maybe I don't know. They didn't
Yeah.
like that. They didn't like that. So. But if you're paying attention to the Syrian news, yes, the Syrian news is quite interesting. With Al Julani said to step down and let somebody else go ahead and run the show, which is very interesting because you don't have that. Like, you didn't have that with al Baghdadi, with ISIS. You didn't have that with the next successor to Kim Jong Un, Kim Il Sung. So you don't have that a lot with these types of people. So the fact that he's willing to step down, and when he does it, though, obviously that's when I will celebrate two things. One, not a lot is being talked about Israel's invasion into the Golan Heights, a buffer zone, which I do not have a lot of respect for. So I think we can always you can healthily criticize people you support, and I think that's a good thing. So I don't support the invasion into Syria. I don't think it's a good thing. I think they need to leave Syria alone. Because what that does is maybe that allows Vladimir Putin to leverage Bashir al-Assad as a way to gain favor to Syria. Iran is having a rough time now. They can't move anything. Syria's collapse really ended their Silk Road-esque aspirations for anything involving a Islamic state of things. And on top of that, with Bashir al-Assad dead, North Korea doesn't have an ally either, because Bashir and his father Hafsa were both decent friends with Kim Jong-un and Kim Il-sung.
He's not dead though.
Bashir al-Assad?
Yeah.
No, Bashir al-Assad's not dead, but Kim Jong-un is dead. But
Kim Il-sung, because you said
I heard he was hiding out in Russia. Is that right?
Yeah, he got
too many names running around in your head.
Yeah, a lot of Bashirs and a lot of al-Assads and a lot of but Hafsa's dead. Hafsa was his father. That was Hafsa al-Assad. He's dead. They desecrated his tomb. So I think that weakens Syria's power structure, and then that by affiliation weakens Iran's power structure, and really goes to show you what kind of people are in charge.
Interesting.
Go ahead.
No, finish your thought first, because I wasn't sure how much more.
I listened to an interesting documentary about Bashir al-Assad and how he wouldn't have taken power if it wasn't for his brother Basil dying in a car accident.
He wasn't first in line. Another interesting thing that I noted, and I didn't know about this. You hear about like poppy fields in Afghanistan and things like that, and how there's the drug trade from Afghanistan, and you didn't hear too much about the fact that there is a drug unique to Syria that Syria's government was manufacturing. And I'm bringing it up not to get into a serious discussion about it, but to there's going to be a point to it in a minute here. It's called Captagon, which sounds like some futuristic, like, your mic's not on. I don't know what you're saying. He's still
There
not
we
there.
go.
Whoops. There he is.
It was an amphetamine in pill form.
Yeah. It was amphetamine mixed with something else that's a word that's difficult to say. It's fenta something. It's not fentanyl. It's some other.
It's the other one.
Something.
It's the other one.
But what happened, and what it is, it's a stimulant that people who go into combat tend to take, so they can be all like, and kind of berserk. But with the new rebels in charge, they've apparently managed to stop export. And I figured something like this would happen in a short period of time, but they've stopped export to other countries around them by 90%.
Yeah.
Ouch.
Which means they've cut off the primary source from the government itself, but not the small-time suppliers yet.
That's going to hurt the economy, isn't it?
No.
On the one hand, yes. On the other hand, no, because the government.
Sure, but
the government was using it for themselves. They weren't using it for the people. The people's economy was already screwed because of the civil war.
Are you talking about the gold versus the cash thing that they got going on right now?
No, this was separate, but
Okay.
Syria's been under economic sanctions for a
Decades.
Yeah.
long
Because I
time.
heard them talking
They
about
were
that, but I
in
didn't
it
really understand it.
when Bashir took office. They were fine, and then the murder of um oh shoot, the guy from Lebanon, their like prime minister,
Yeah.
put Assad and Syria on Rafiq. When Rafiq was murdered, uh, Bashir al-Assad and his country were put on sanctions, much like North Korea. So they use that drug as sort of a way to make money, because when you
Okay.
don't have when you're sanctioned up like North Korea is. North Korea right now, I was watching a few documentaries, and they have drug deals, they have arms sellers. Bureau 39 is the
Thank
bureau
you,
you want to
Lighthouse.
look into.
North
Um,
Korea is in
It's
such
right.
rough shape economically, though, and you don't hear about this a
right.
lot, but they're so bad off that they can't afford fertilizer for their crops.
They
So
can't.
they're usually using human waste to fertilize their crops, which just makes people sick because it's got
Yeah.
enzymes and
Well,
parasites and things
the
that.
reason why is because we're meat eaters. You can't
Mm,
use meat eaters' feces for fertilizer. You have to use plant eaters because their feces goes back into the earth. As to when you eat meat, that
mm.
So,
feces is different and it
Death Stranding
causes
lied
more
to me.
things. Yeah, see, untreated human waste. He's not wrong. That's why cow fertilizer is always used. You don't really use pigs because pigs eat everything. They eat meat. They eat themselves. You don't do that. But the thing with
Yes.
North Korea is, while the economy is hurting, the those in power aren't hurting at all, because once again they engage in drug trade, they engage in arms deals, they engage in real estate, they send workers to other countries. And so, in a way, it was like that. But with Al Assad, it was different. See, he was getting his money on an international stage, and at one point, Syria was really good friends with um, their France's president, because France had owned Syria for a while, and then
Hmm.
Syria took their own stuff, and then they used that. And that's a good point. But from Wekos Jones, Wekos Jones, the one and only, you can't clone him. Um, for people watching, hit that like button, subscribe, and please share our videos. Yeah, you should definitely Google Bureau 39. A lot of North Korean upper party members have lavish lifestyles based on Bureau 39. They also send workers to other countries to work and bring back money. There's a couple hotels in different locations, like in Thailand and places like that, that charge an abundant amount of money. Those restaurants make like $1 million a year or more because it's a touristy thing. There's a museum in where is it? I want to say Thailand again, that has like the it has to do with North Korea, but North Korea paid for it. They paid for the whole museum, and that's like $3 to $5 million per year revenue. And that's what Assad was doing. You do a lot of stuff like that, illegal arms, drugs. You have Iran backing you. You have the Soviet Union backing you. Vladimir Putin and Bashir al-Assad were friends. You know what I mean? And so, what
If
does
Russia
that tell
hadn't been
you?
drawn away on all this focus on Ukraine, they would probably still be pumping money into Syria, and Syria would still be under Assad's control
Yeah,
because he would
yeah,
have the forces to fight back against the rebels. That's why he was able to hold back the rebels since 2011.
yeah, because he had that money flowing in. He had Russia flowing in. He had all those flowing in, and now he doesn't. Now Syria doesn't have that. But that's a good thing, I think. I think Syria should join the world stage, but I don't think they should join any form of um, unification unless it's proper. What I hope happens with the collapse of that pipeline for Hezbollah into Syria, I hope Iran collapses and can be restored to its greatness, a la revolution. Because I think that's the only thing that's going to displace. Let me just say this too before we get carried away with things. I don't think Islam at its core is a bad thing. I think when it's orthodox and radicalized, much like Christianity, I think that's when the bad things happen. I think the Sufi Muslims are fantastic. I think that mystic Islam is a peaceful thing. I think anytime anything becomes mystic, where you're looking into self and you're looking to better yourself via that belief system, I think that encourages growth. But I think when you have orthodox ideologies, um, coupled with America's involvement in these places that have displaced people, people have lost children. When Obama was president, he droned Yemen and droned a wedding party,
Yemen
and
is still a mess.
Yemen is a mess because of
Which,
things like that.
might I say real quick,
Please.
terrorism by the UN is defined as an act, a terror act committed against non-combatants. So therefore, that would make that an act of terrorism.
Yes. But we can get away with it. We can get away with stuff in the Middle East because they're poor.
Because it's anti-terrorism.
Supposedly, but
it's complicated. There's a lot of loopholes.
One person's terrorist is another person's freedom fighter.
Exactly.
So you got to remember that, as much as people love Che Guevara, he only liked his people. He didn't like any other color, but his people, he was a racist. So, we glamorize those kinds of people, but they're horrible human beings. Ho Chi Minh, one of them, Mao Zedong, another one. All these people are dictators. The more we get into countries like Syria, the more we see that they're built off historical things. Like Syria is a very prominent place in history. Syria is one of the most prominent places. Damascus being the oldest populated city. That means that Damascus has never been depopulated. There has always been a population. Pol Pot was another one, yeah. Never been abandoned, never been destroyed, in terms of old buildings collapse, you got to build new ones. But in terms of like a Sodom and Gomorrah-esque destruction, not once. So, and really, Syria holds a lot of old places that I think a lot of people don't truly understand. And what I think it is, and I have, let me pull it up here because I have it. I got to go to like 15 different things. We have to remember that Syria is also part of Ebla, like the Ebla tablets, the Ebla dynasty, Tel Marduk, where Abel was supposedly buried. There's a lot of historical religious aspects that take place in the region of Syria or Assyria when it was a larger empire. So in this day and age, that place is very highly contested, and it's always been contested. Syria has always been a place of just turmoil.
It's a real strategic kind of spot in the Middle East, which is like, it's kind of the confluence of
it's
a
like
lot
right
of
in the center, isn't it?
Yeah, of a lot of other major players of the ancient world.
Yep. You've got Lebanon, you've got Israel, you've got Iran, you have all these other countries.
And also, while you're mentioning the religious aspect of it, I didn't really understand it. There's a lot going on politically, especially. But I had heard during my research, I found something about there was an entire city that was only for Jewish people. Do you know about that? Like, after they had a war or something, when they separated from some other area, they were like, you can leave, but we're going to keep this city. Or something like that.
There was a lot of complicated stuff in the ancient world as far as, like, Jerusalem has been, it was a Jewish city, then it wasn't, then it was a Jewish city, then it wasn't, then it was a Jewish city, then it wasn't.
Yeah,
because
that
every
sounds
time
like
it got conquered, they basically kicked all the Jews out.
That's the one I was thinking of, yeah.
Which is why that's why Israel is so like, this is ours now, we live here, we're staying here, we're not going anywhere, because they've historically had the diaspora is something that happened. Look that up if you're interested. And the thing about Syria is that it took up until the 1970s to become a real unified country, which is it's kind of crazy how long it took because it dates back to Mesopotamia.
Yeah.
The early Syrian people, before they even had that as a name, interacted with Sumerians, with the Akkadians, with a lot of those ancient societies,
Yep.
and they managed to stay at least with Damascus and Aleppo, their two oldest cities,
Yep.
managed to continue inhabiting those spaces throughout that entire time when a lot of the other empires around them went through huge periods of change and abandonment. Like Sumer periodically had huge cities that were just emptied out. Same with the Akkadians. And when Babylon moved in, they frequently cut off people that were not productive or just too much work to keep a hold of. And then, of course, you had the Romans and the Ottomans and everybody else that's come on through since then. And with Syria, you have these two cities at the very least out of the country that have always had people there.
Yeah.
Regardless
They've
of
never
what's
been
going
abandoned.
on.
Yeah. Always. And the interesting aspect is some of the most religious things have happened in Damascus. You had Paul's conversion to Christianity that happened in Damascus. You had Damascus at one point was also part of the Arameans, which was a whole nother group of people from Aram, which is suspiciously like Iran, but I'm not going to go into that right now. Maybe we'll go into that.
Aramaic is a root language now.
Yeah.
It leads to, like, you've got Aramaic, you've got Semitic, you've got a few other root languages that continue to create how we speak in the world today.
And we have to remember, too, that Abraham was also of this same lineage when he lived in Mesopotamia. So you have a historical landscape that hasn't changed historical landscapes ever. It's been Damascus. It's been Aleppo, two of the oldest cities. And, you know, when they went in and destroyed a good chunk of Damascus, of Aleppo.
We lost a lot of history, didn't we?
We've lost so much history in the Middle East because of drone strikes, because of wars, because of the Islamic State that we'll never get back.
I think it's intentional.
Of course it is.
In some cases, it's brutally intentional. Like the Islamic State they were such an extreme case that they were like, no, we don't want any sort of images of any other deities, any other cultures, anything. It's only us, and that's it. So they went in and they destroyed a lot of Sumerian. They went into museums and destroyed Sumerian artifacts and toppled statues and things when they first swept through the regions. So
destroyed seating Buddhas that were in Arabic lands, which would have been key to understanding religion's role in history as a whole. But that's what happens in Orthodox belief systems, where it's so rigorous that there is no God before me. I will destroy everything.
So would either one of you know how to answer Lighthouse's question? Is it culturally unified?
Syria, no. There's a lot of different cultures. There's the Kurds,
the Sunnis, you got the Shiites, you got the Kurds, you got the Baathists, which is more political than religious, but still you've got...
Baathists are like a social left group.
That's the whole problem. That's why Assad, the Assad family, that's how they took power to begin with, because they forced everybody to all be on the same page, but they didn't cure the problem. There have been thousands of years of just tribal animosity that simmered and kept simmering, and now we still have that. Even though the regime is toppled, you still have to go to the problem of figuring out how these various groups are going to fit together. The Kurds, they've been getting the short end of the stick for a while.
They got the short end of the stick. They're on the same level as the Yazidi people at this point. The Kurds and
the United States stabbed them in the back. The Kurds too.
100%. That's what the U.S. does best. We're in it for our own good. How do the cultures in Syria all work together? Well, you don't. You just survive. When you're dealing with a regime, we have to understand that Sednaya prison, that was the quintessential, everybody goes here, you don't get out of this, because it's torture and pulling nails out of fingers and doing foul, horrible things to women and people and children, they are still pulling bodies out of Sednaya prison from Bashar al-Assad's regime. And here's the thing, Bashar al-Assad started out very well. Like, he wanted the political dissidents. He wanted people to have a say in what goes on. He wanted people to actually, if there's a problem, step up and say it. It's okay to disagree as long as it's in a peaceful manner. But what happened was the people around Bashar al-Assad said, you're going to be a weak ruler if you let this kind of thing go by. So the good old boy system just kept power. It didn't go anywhere. And so what happened is that Syria just became a horrid dictatorship where you couldn't say anything. If you said something, they would kidnap you in the middle of the night. They would kidnap
and
you,
throw you in prison,
your family. If anybody came to ask about you, they would kidnap that person. If anybody came to ask about that person, they would kidnap that person. It doesn't matter.
And
there's
then the
very
Arab
few
Spring
instances.
came along.
And then the Arab Spring came along.
And made the whole situation worse because then they cracked down even harder. And that's when the rebellion started, because you can only be pushed so far before it's just like, hey, you know what? Now we got to overthrow you. And that's when everything went way downhill in 2011.
And while you're talking about the prison real quick, I actually heard that they released one of his torturers from one of the prisons. Did you hear about that?
There is a lot of torturers, but they're not giving amnesty to anybody in his cabinet. Okay. So they are 100%
criminals.
Yes, and they're going to be treated as such, which they should be.
Yeah.
You know, you can't stand by. I think like 300,000 citizens died in a skirmish. Citizens, non-combatants.
I mean, this isn't Operation Paperclip.
No, because Operation
I was making a joke about that.
Wouldn't make any sense for this, because there would be no reason for us to fake an invasion when George Bush just invaded it all of his own accord.
I was just
well, he used 9/11. He used 9/11 to invade the Middle East.
I was just insinuating that there have been
Syria.
Times in history where we have let people get away with heinous crimes.
No, the United States has wanted to topple the regime in Syria for a long time, which is
exactly what I'm saying, Wikos.
When the Islamic State swept through, we used that as an excuse to say, oh yeah, sure, now we're going to help you whether you like it or not, because we got to fight the Islamic State. So we kind of forced our way into Syria against Assad's wishes.
He did.
But he didn't have much of a choice because he was too busy fighting the Islamic State that he couldn't fight us at the same time. And
he was fighting a battle on all fronts.
Once we got a foothold in there, it then became a standoff between us and Russia over who could push Syria which direction. And until recently, Russia still had that upper hand, and Syria was still good. And then the Ukraine happened, Russia vacated, and all it takes is a shove.
And that's the thing, is now we have multiple powers that were vying for that. You had Israel vying for Syria, parts of Syria, the U.S. helping Israel, Iran, Russia, all pulling. But then with the Ukraine incident, Russia now has to fight on a different front, and they're getting hit pretty hard. So now we got to pull away from Syria. Your collapse, so now Iran doesn't have the same safe way into that nation. So now
they're getting hammered from Hamas and Hezbollah getting taken down.
Yeah, so it's just the Middle East is hurting right now. Like, people are actually, you know, Syria itself is going to take a long time to rebuild. Like 100 years is what they said from all the destruction. The same with the Ukraine. It'll take 100 years to be able to rebuild it to where you couldn't tell that there was a war there. But Syria holds the world's oldest city, world's oldest inhabited city, still populated. And that means something. There's a reason people are there. There's a reason America wants to be there. And it's not to give out free handshakes and kisses. No, my friends. America wants something from the Middle East because we have enough oil here to supply our nation for many years to come, but we want something over there, and it's not oil. If we wanted oil from another country, we could just take it from Venezuela. We could literally just go down there and just take it. They're
And
not
it
going to
feels
They'd
like-
sell it to us on
it
the
feels
cheap
like
to get
it's
their
more than
economy
just
back on
land.
order.
It feels like it goes deeper than just land too.
Well,
It goes way deeper
Iran-
than just land.
Iran is the focus, really. As I mentioned last week, I'm pretty certain of it. Iran really is in the crosshairs right now. And like all of this
Yeah,
is
100%.
unfortunately like collateral damage in the effort to get to Iran for a few different reasons. I mean, they'll tell you it's because Iran is a nuclear state. They'll tell you all this other stuff, and it's a danger to the world stage. But Iran, we've already gone through Iraq, and we've got Iraq pretty much on lockdown. But Iran is the other part where the bulk of the most ancient civilizations on Earth began that we know of.
Yeah.
It's where Sumeria and Akkad and a lot of our prehistory as human beings, civilized human beings, first getting together in cities and towns, begins in Iran. And I really 100% think that that's the whole point. It's to get there and control either the story of the history or to find something that's been lost to history, or to get a hold of something that you can use to legitimize
Power.
some historical story.
Yeah, that's it.
And that's really what it is. And Iran has been strong for so long and brutal, like really brutally strong. And that's one thing you'll notice about the Middle East is the strongest nations over there are the ones that have most brutally repressed their citizens.
Yeah, they have to.
Saudi Arabia is rich as heck now.
Oh yeah, Saudi Arabia is dumb.
they-
Like all these people here think they're rich. Saudi Arabia is
ridiculously rich
billions.
because they managed to push past that extremist view of how people look at them by offering all these different things. Now they've got tourism, they've got the oil, they've got this. They're becoming civilized. They've got all these cities that look great. They've got Dubai, they've got all these other places. But they're still like, you go to Saudi Arabia, if you're a woman, you have to be covered. You don't always have to cover your face. That's one thing, but you do have to cover the rest of you. And the reason I know that is because I don't want to dull your thunder there, but I got to get my point out real quick. Is because, and this is going to be funny to some people, but if you watch pro wrestling, anytime you watch the times that the WWE is over in Saudi Arabia, the women are clothed completely, not an inch like seen from the neck down.
Yeah.
Only there. Because they have to be, because Saudi Arabia is paying huge amounts of money to have them over there for the entertainment.
Oh shoot!
But the
Billions
men
of
don't.
dollars.
They were in their trunks. They're in they're doing their stuff, whatever. But every single one of the ladies, from the announcers, from the wrestlers, from any other woman on the crew, and that's Saudi Arabia. It's little things like that you notice that you forget about because they're throwing money left and right. But they still treat people as second-class citizens routinely and don't think twice about it. And that's the Middle East.
When you can just go out and buy a $500,000 Bugatti or a 1.2 million Koenigsegg, you don't have to worry about anything else. You can just go drive, hit the desert, drive around. You know, they put luxury out so much in your face in Saudi Arabia, and they'll go on record and tell like, yeah, we don't do that barbaric stuff. We don't do what those other barbaric countries do. Come to Saudi Arabia. Come hang out. I would love to go to Saudi Arabia.
I actually had a pop culture story.
Lighthouse. Yes, that's exactly what we say. Because the minute we say, well, they're not like us, that's when we start wanting to invade and take over. That's their culture. If people there want to revolt against it, fine.
They are.
But I have no right to go over to another person's home and tell them how to govern their home. I don't have that. That's the
I'm
problem.
still going to
with
be
the
angry
United
about
States.
it, though. I mean,
You can be angry.
I'm not going to go force them to stop because I can't.
No, you can't.
But just like in India, I have problems with their culture, but I can't. I'm not going to go over there and do anything about it because they're just going to fight back against it. But you can't be the world police.
And the thing is, if you go to it, and this is what they always tell you in when you go to another country that's highly politically charged. Never go to their political meets. Don't have an opinion. Stay the out of the way, which is what every American should be doing. It's none of our business. Mind your business. If they want to require women to cover their heads, okay, I'm for it. Let them cover their heads. If the women there and everybody else wants to revolt, that's their business. That's not my business. If I go to another person's home, I have to expect to abide by their culture and abide by their belief systems. And that's just that. And I'm going to do that because it's not my place. Yeah, wrong is wrong, bro, when you're doing life in a Turkish prison and you're never getting out. Ever.
The thing about it is we shouldn't be forcing regime change. We should be pushing for them to change how they treat their people, and that's 100% fact. But they should. But we again are not the world police.
No, we're not.
And we should not be, because every time we've pushed regime change, we've screwed it up. We've messed it up. Look at South America.
We didn't screw anything up. We got the profit that we needed out of it and then let it fall to turmoil. South America was for drugs. South America was the CIA getting coca plants to bring cocaine into the United States so they could create addicts via crack cocaine in the projects via Lyndon Baines Johnson. And then what they did was you get them addicted, you put them in prison, you keep that pipeline going, you get $35,000 an inmate in Ohio. Every inmate is $35,000 to the state that goes through that door. So why wouldn't you be arresting everybody for every drug you can possibly find? Make up charges, make up things, meet quotas. That's what we do in the United States. So to sit here and we have enough problems to fight here. We don't need to be fighting other people's countries' problems. It's none of our business. Unless they're going to launch a nuclear weapon, then obviously that is our business.
I mean,
but if it's not that, no.
We had reasons to go and to do things in World War I and World War II.
Agreed.
Because those were some particular human rights things that
was Germany getting out of pocket, and we had to smack shit out of them.
Of like, it wasn't just a lot of people say that, you know what, if Germany had kept to themselves and just done things in their own country, people would have left them alone. They would have destroyed their own country. But they went to neighboring countries like Poland, etc., and started messing with other people around them. And that's when it becomes a problem. And that's the whole issue with the Middle East, is because so much of the region has very similar outlooks on things. They have very similar, a lot of the countries over there are definitely guilty of human rights abuses, 100% fact. But they're not bringing those to places outside of the region so far. So again, if you involve yourself in that kind of thing, you run the risk of not helping the problem and causing more damage to the problem.
You're gonna exacerbate the problem that you don't need to be in the first place. It's their country, it's their rules. If the people want to go against it, that's their business. That's none of my concern. My concern isn't to fight for your human rights. My concern is to fight for my countrymen's human rights. Like, once that's taken care of, sure, we can go on to the next problem. But while we're still having human rights violations here in the United States, there's no point in fighting for somebody else's human rights. I'm sorry, I just don't see that. We are not the world police. We do not need to be out there policing the world. The one thing that I liked about this whole Syria thing is that it wasn't done by the United States. Sure, we helped Israel and we did this, that, but the revolution itself was from within. It was from the populace. It was from the people saying, we've had enough. It's enough. And I think that's what it needed. I think every time the U.S., like you said, it goes awry, but not because we messed up, but because we don't support whoever we put on the throne after we get what we need out of them. We'll let them collapse into a pit of their own mess because we do not care. We want to go in, get what we can get, whether that be minerals, whether that be supplies, whether that be gold, whatever is harnessed from these countries. Once we've pulled everything we need out of a country, we just let it die. We don't care We don't care about the people. The United States could care less about any of those countries. You think Obama loses sleep about that family that he droned in Yemen? You
Nah,
think he gives a shit? He don't give a shit. You
they don't
think
even care
Bush?
about our people.
You think George Bush Jr. gives a shit that because of what he did, he was the cause for 9/11 essentially? He wanted to go in and have shit taken care of, so we got taken care of. You asked me why the Air Force was told to stand down the day of 9/11. You tell me why that was a thing. Why there was no planes in the air that day at all. Why? And you expect me to want us to go into Syria and cause problems? No. I was against our invasion in 2000 and what was that, 15, 16 or 11? It was one of the ones we were involved in.
It
And
was shortly
I
after 2011 because that's when the Islamic State came up during the Obama administration.
Yeah, that's because
So
they
it
were let
was
out of the Iraq jails because Baghdadi was released from the Iraqi jails, and the Iraqi jail was um were let go. The real question is, we do care, and when are we going to expect? We got to expect responsibility in our own country first before we expect responsibility from other countries. And that's not, like I said, and I'll say it again, it's none of our business. It's none of our business. No, but that's the point is, nobody's saying that we don't care. What I'm saying is we need to worry about our own country first. We need to keep all of our resources here. We need to help each other first, not send $32 billion to the Ukraine when North Carolina people don't have homes to live in, when they could very well have homes to live in. So the thing is we can't. Obama and Bush created the biggest crisis in the Middle East I've ever seen. It was almost as bad as the 1979 revolt of the Shah, but the Shah wasn't a great person either, and it was another cult of personality thing when the Ayatollah took over. So it's like you traded one bad thing for an even worser thing, and I want to see Iran be free. I want to see Iran be opened up for trade. I want to see the people flourish. I want to see America become good friends with Iran and Russia. I don't hate other countries because the media or the government tells us to. I don't do that. I look to see what their country's about and what their leaders are about. Bashir al-Assad was a horrible human being. Whatever you want to say about Syrians as a whole, we need to understand that. Well, I mean, the Carter was really big on the whole 1979 Iran overtake by the Ayatollah, but there were things the Shah was doing that wasn't that great either. So it was
the Shah was
very much a push and pull.
was being financed and supported by outside countries, again
Yeah,
showing that. And that's another big thing with the
they
Middle
could be
East.
bought.
The Middle East is resentful of other countries because for a long time other more civilized quote unquote countries have been telling it what to do and been
Yeah,
in power over there. The British were over there, the French were
yeah,
over there, we
yep.
were over there,
Russia,
Russia,
all of
and
them.
they
Yeah,
got sick of it, and so they went a different direction. They went a more extreme direction because they didn't like
yeah,
our direction. And if we hadn't, and that's a delicate kind of walk to make. It's that
it is.
we are a civilized society and we do bring a lot of good things to the table, but you can't throw them at people and say this is how you need to do things now and expect them just to roll over and do it.
Right.
You can't just come in and say this is the better way to do it without enough time to build up the reason why that's a better way to do it. And so they legitimately have a gripe with the Western world for
Yep.
forcing that image on them, whether we meant to force it on them or not. To them, we have forced it on them, and they're resentful of it because it's against their culture, it's against their history, and it's easy for them to look at us, regardless of whether we're trying to help or not, as foreign invaders, which is why in Afghanistan, they never really learned anything from us. We thought supposedly we were supposed to be teaching them how to defend their country and to do all this other stuff. So when we pulled out, they hadn't learned a thing because we took it for granted. We thought, yeah, we're teaching you how to defend yourselves, and then we left, and they didn't know a thing because they didn't understand why they needed that, because we didn't spend the time to tell them why they needed to know that. And now Afghanistan is a cesspool again.
It's a mess. Just like Libya became a mess, just like everywhere the United States has been in the Middle East has been a mess. Yemen's a mess. Saudi Arabia isn't a mess because we're not there and they're busy getting rich because they have the oil, they have the vroom, they have the thing to make the thing go. And I know that sounds crazy, but Saudi Arabia is legitimately like is the United States of the Middle Eastern world, not in terms of, people don't have the same free rights as we do, but they are like the most developed aspect of the Middle East.
They've got control of OPEC, which is the oil conglomerate in the Middle East, which the United States and the Western world is constantly trying to undercut. If you wonder why the gas prices and the oil prices go up and down so badly, it's because we're in this war of our oil versus their oil, because we have plenty of oil here. We have plenty of oil here. Plus, we're getting it from Canada. We have oil piped in from Canada. We're getting oil from all over the place. We really don't need the oil over there. We want the control of the global oil sale. And they don't want us to have that. So they have their own cartel, basically.
Yeah.
That's what OPEC is. It's a cartel of oil companies from the Middle East that said, no, we're going to set our prices. We're going to set our distribution. We're all going to do all our things. And we don't care if you like it or not. And so we have to negotiate and fight back with them all the time. And none of it is really necessary.
Yeah, we should have trained them better. We left Libya a mess. We left Afghanistan a mess. And I've said this before. People will say one specific group of people's lives matter. We don't even care about children's lives. So until the children's lives matter, nobody else's life can matter. Because if you're not going to make a place safe enough for children, you can't make a place safe enough for anybody. And, that was my issue with the whole droning aspect. It's indiscriminately. The drone isn't going to be like, oh, there's kids on there, let me stop. Oh, no, there's kids on there. I'll wait until the kids are gone and I'll strike. No, a drone will destroy everything. Kids, women, men. They don't care. And that was my real big issue. That was my eye-opening to America and what we were doing. I always knew that America was shady in certain parts, but when I started to dig deep and realize they didn't care, you push that button. They didn't care if they got the wrong wedding, if some man lost a wife, if some man lost, and Americans are so quick to blame the Middle East. But if you bombed me, say if you bombed my area tonight, tomorrow you're going to see a terrorist. I'm going to do everything I possibly can to remove any power you will ever have. Because once you've taken my family from me, there's no reason for me to care anymore. There's no reason for me to worry about that. And, you put that it should be classified. Then you got to classify all governments as that.
Exactly.
You got to classify but you can't do that.
Because I know. That's the problem.
Not the U.S. as a whole, we're not bad people.
My point is humanity, regardless of us with, I'm not going to name anything because I'm not trying to get us kicked off here, or Japan with unit that I forgot the number.
731, right?
731, or Nanking, or, all over the place. Every world government has committed at least one act of terrorism.
Atrocity more so, not so much terrorism.
Yeah, okay.
But atrocities more.
Atrocities.
So.
Human nature, this gets into some real philosophical area, and we probably don't have time to get too far into the whole length and breadth of it. But human nature, regardless of how many times people like to say that
violence,
that the heart of every person, there's a good person in there somewhere.
Mhm.
Human nature is that we are a combative species because we are a carnivorous species at the basic part of it, and carnivores are innately competitive to a certain point. And because we have our capacity for thought and our capacity for all these other things, we are the worst of the worst in how bad that can get as
Yeah.
human beings. And that's just people like to deny that that's part of who we are as a human species, but it's true. Human nature will always be combative in some effect. That's why we have sports teams for competition, to get that combative nature out. That's why we have all these other things to try to get that out of us so that we can be good people the rest of the time.
Yeah.
But and that doesn't mean we should just accept it and just, oh yeah, well, okay, I'm a combative person, so I should just be like that all the time. You
Right.
should always strive to be better than you are.
Agreed.
That's a given thing. You should, as a thinking, sentient person, you should always strive to be better than you are. But you can't be surprised when you look around you and you see so many other people who are the worst of the worst, unfortunately, because that's human nature. The only real thing you can do is, can you be a better person than that?
I
Very good.
actually have a philosophy that I agree with that I've seen in some pop culture that humans themselves, like you said, whether they intend to do it or not, might actually be the very thing on this earth that is poison. Like we are poison to the planet, and what if all these things like mountain lions, whatever,
Yeah.
all
Even
these
it out.
wild animals that come in and try to attack humans, what if that is the world in its own natural earthly way trying to defend itself from the poison that is humanity?
But humanity itself isn't a poison. Humanity itself, when you get to the real root of it, human beings are highly intelligent and we can always make the world better. It's when we get into a mob mentality that we think that it's for the greater
Yes.
good. When you have to start saying it's for the greater good, there's usually a problem that's coming behind that.
Speaking of mob mentality, real quick, I think
Real quick.
humans are much more kind and loving on their own than they are when they get into a large group.
Well,
Yeah.
because it's herd mentality, and
Yeah.
that's
There it is.
because, and I know people are going to be kind of irritated if I say stuff like this because of certain religious beliefs, and I'm not trying to step on those, but at the core, we're hyper evolved animals, basically. We're just like any other species on the planet. We just have more capacity for thought and to be able to choose how to do things.
Yeah.
And the thing of it is, individuals find it easy to make certain choices. If you're in a group, it's more difficult
Peer
to make those
pressure.
choices because everybody, oh, well, I'm seeing these people do this, I'm seeing these people do that. What if I make the
Right.
wrong choice? And you doubt yourself. And so the trick is to find that balance in there, and when you should be aggressive in your convictions, in your instincts, and when sometimes you should just be like, no, you know what? This doesn't require that. This requires a lot more empathy. This requires a lot more. Um,
He drunk. That boy. That boy. Wow. That
oh,
boy. Wow. He got his disco shoes for dance.
it requires a lot more tactful an approach. And the problem that a lot of us have is that we do not have a distinction in that. It's just one or the other, and that's how
Yeah.
life is. And in ancient times, it was actually, there was a bit more of one and the other. You had,
Yeah.
like, the ancient Islamists gave us arithmetic. Our system of numbering can be 100% directly traced, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, whatever, to the early Islamic arithmetists. And now you see over there, when people talk about Islamic extremists and things, which are the majority over there, you have to wonder, where's the disconnect? It's because
Yeah.
that human nature tipped one way too far the other
Sure did.
direction, and there's
They-
always a cause to it.
I think that Islam took a real big hit with the Mongols. The Mongols, I think, wiped out a lot of that Islamic thought of the more knowledgeable aspect, because
And that's a possibility. Mm.
after the Mongol rule was all about survival. I mean, I get it. The
Yeah.
Mongols are one of the most feared people on the planet. It's like, I think it's a certain percentage of the United States is related to Mongols just because of how like pillaging and doing things like that.
One out of
Mongols are all
every
about
like
that action.
100 people in the world, I think it is, can trace their
Yeah.
blood lineage back to Genghis Khan.
Yeah.
Which is
Wow.
ridiculous. That's
'Cause
how
he was
prolific he
awesome.
was.
He was out there clanging and
how-
banging,
Yeah, doing a lot of that bagging.
clanging and banging, clanging and banging.
It's when you see a force come in that's strong in a certain way, how do you answer that? The only way you can answer it is with an equal amount of force.
Yep.
It's like,
Yeah.
and I know a lot of people might not have liked the game. The game Outriders has a good analogy to this. I mean, there was a lot of, the game was kind of a dumb game. It was Sci-Fi Channel story, Sci-Fi original movie story. Don't get me wrong. But in the game, spoilers for anybody who hasn't played, it's been years. You should have played it by now.
I didn't.
There's a species of relatively peaceful people on this planet that the humans came and they thought that the people were scheming against them because they could do things that the people couldn't. And so the humans came in and they enslaved everybody. They started running concentration camps and really horrible stuff, right? The species found a way to transform themselves into savage beast, like big, beefy, beastie people to fight back. They lost all their capacity to reason, to create art, to do anything good, and just were focused on fighting off the invaders because that's all they saw themselves able to do. They didn't see any other choice because the invaders came in, did all this brutality, and they thought, how do we answer that brutality? We have to become brutal ourselves. And that's how human nature works. You see somebody come in and act a certain way. How many times have you been going about your day and some jerk comes in and like treats you like trash and you're just like, yeah, whatever, and then you're mad the rest of the day because that's how you answer that. Somebody treats you like trash, you might go home and you say something that you shouldn't to somebody in your family because you're mad because somebody treated you like trash. And I'm not excusing that because that's a bad way to approach things. You should always strive to be better than that, but that's how human nature works, and that's where we're at.
And where we are at now is at the end of the show. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank our guests, the intern and Spider. Thank you for being guests on the show tonight.
I'm a guest now.
I hope you guys can come back for future
I'm a
shows.
guest now.
We appreciate you. Thank you.
Yes, I like it.
Steven, your services are no longer required here with this Uncanny Earth. We wish you well on all your.
That's a good point, Wekos. I'd like to address that, but we don't have any time. But it is a good point.
He left.
Hello.
Oh, I came back. Damn it. Anyways, y'all, I hope everybody has a wonderful day. Tomorrow, Christmas is coming up. So from this Uncanny Earth, we wish you all a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. He does. He's under the umbrella. He don't have a choice. So we will see you guys next week. Maybe I might do my 12-hour stream next Thursday, but we'll figure that out as we get closer to that time for St. Jude. So, and I know these two yahoos are going to help me stay up. So,
and I will not be here on Saturday.
He will not, and that's okay.
He's handling some personal business. So, yeah, personal business.
It's getting real Mongolian in here. I hate the Mongolian city wall. So, anyways, from me, Spider, Steve the intern, Merry Christmas, and as always, why be boring when you can be uncanny? Thank you all for watching, listening, and hearing, and we'll see you folks very soon. Peace.